good afternoon. This is Bassam Haddad. I am joined by my wonderful co-host, Jessica Holland. Hi, Jessica.
Hello.
So basically, this is Search Files. It's the launching episode 1, which Jessica will talk about, where we talk about knowledge production project deliverables, as well as the Middle East Studies Pedagogy Initiative and its work. And we are hosting a couple of awesome people today, which Jessica will talk about. The Knowledge Production Project at knowledgeproduction.com is a project that started in 2008, and it has developed in magnificent ways. And we just redid the data visualization. It's part of the Arab Studies Institute's organization, the umbrella organization. And this particular podcast is co-sponsored by Status Podcast, Al Wada. It's also co-sponsored by the Middle East and Islamic Studies program at George Mason University, and of course MESP and KPP as the driving forces behind it. We will say a lot more in this podcast about knowledge production and pedagogy throughout. Thank you for joining us. This will be a recurring podcast, and I will give the microphone to my colleague, Jessica.
Thanks so much, Bassam. And if you could get started by playing the video, which shows off all of the new data visualization updates that we've made to the Knowledge Production Project website, that would be fantastic. We can get the Porsche out of the garage, as we've been saying about this project for the last couple of months, trying to get the...
Absolutely, here we go. I think Jessica, you were muted. So if you would like to repeat the last bit. You're still muted on your end for some reason. One second. Okay, how about now? Try now. Okay, you're good. You're good, yes.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, I think it may have just been the video there. So as you can see, we've got this gorgeous heat map loading up. It's showing that you can search key terms, for example, political violence. It'll then take you through the search results through all different formats. So here we can see peer-reviewed articles, can select one, and then you can either search Google for this title, find that actual article on a journal website, or bookmark it to come back to later, perhaps make a series. You can also see book reviews that are relevant, as well as books too. And it'll give you the number of results for that particular search term. And then, of course, you can reset and go back and try something else. So another part of the website is the think tanks section. And this has over 52 think tanks based in the United States and in Europe. And essentially, you can go through and look at the revenues to compare them to each other, see what the average was for particular years, and also have a look at the number of congressional testimonies and publications. And then if you've got a particular think tank in mind, you can go to, for example, the RAND Corporation here, and it'll take you through the recent publications that they've been putting out. Here there's about 100, any congressional testimony records that their experts have delivered. And then finally, we have the financial section. So you can look through the total revenue for the past couple of years, compare how it's trending, and then compared to another think tank such as Amnesty International. And you can see that there's quite a fair bit of difference here, and you can compare year on year to see where the trend that's basically coming through. And then the final part of the website is the policy network section. And so in this interactive data visualization, you can see the relationships between government institutions, experts, and think tanks. So we start, for example, with the Department of State, and then see the experts that are related to that government department, and then finally the think tanks that are related to those experts. So you basically have a visual sense of how all of these connections are made and how they are maintained throughout time. And as you can see, it's a fairly complex web that we've created. This is for the 2012 to 2014 records of these relationships. You can search, for example, to look at the US Congress and see who's connected to that and which think tanks. And then using the sidebar on the right-hand side, you can click any of those underlined terms to search for a particular think tank and see how that's related now back to the US Congress again. So essentially, you've got in one location the ability to assess knowledge production and its impact on the real world in a variety of different ways. Thank you so much, Bassam, for the video. And yeah, I'd love to introduce the podcast. So essentially, this is Search Files. This is our first episode. We'll be covering trends in knowledge production and pedagogy. And as the host, we'll be holding monthly conversations with data analysts and educators or faculty from industry as well as academia. This time, we'll be featuring a discussion on data visualizations, given our new website, and we'll also be addressing the approaches to teaching films in the classroom. So without further ado, I would love to introduce our first guest, who is Wesley Grubbs. Wes founded the data visualization studio Pitch Interactive. Hi, Wes. Just giving you a little introduction here so the viewers know who you are. And he's got over 20 years of experience in the interactive industry. Wes has a master's degree in information systems and a bachelor's degree in international economics from the University of Arkansas. And primarily, Wes's work focuses on revealing patterns about human behavior and how our actions impact our surroundings. So, hello, Wes, and thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Hi, Jessica. Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Welcome, Wes. Wes is not just a brilliant mind in data visualization and beyond, but also is a friend for the past, how many years? Was it 2012, Wes?
A long time ago.
Yes.
I don't remember anymore.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Let's not announce it. So welcome aboard.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we met after we did the piece on the drone strikes.
Absolutely.
And you reached out, and that's where we sort of formed our relationship from there.
Which actually was extremely impressive, and it was timely because now it's timely because of all of the Afghanistan stories in the news. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, all right. Well, perhaps we can kick off the conversation by talking a little bit more about what data visualization actually is and the role it can play in communicating information to audiences. And perhaps, Wes, if you can also talk to our listeners a bit about the ethical questions behind that and perhaps the responsibilities of the data storyteller or the person making the data visualization.
Yeah, I'll do my best with the time here. Ethical. Data visualization is basically, it's the process of taking data, and data is described as quantities, characters, symbols, and a list, if you imagine Excel. And it's taking these and finding graphical ways to represent them. The reason why data visualization is important, at least for us, and sort of my belief and philosophy, is that our brains are very much wired to read things visually. So often before anything else, smell is another way, and hearing and whatnot. But visual representation is something that we're all as humans sort of wired to understand, like dangers and weather changes and stuff out in nature. But it's also that the visual representation of this is one of the best ways of conveying information and to somebody so that they can retain that information as well. And they can remember it, and then there's a story there, and they can communicate that further, or really even most importantly, for people to be able to see relationships and patterns and trends in ways that really is not possible through the other medium. Where should I go to next? The ethical part, as far as like how it's conveyed, our process is we usually grab large amounts of data. In this case, with the knowledge production project, we had over 40,000 rows of data to work with. And the process is really we have our own sort of special sauce of when we look at data and we start to understand what's important with this data based on discussions with you or our clients. Who's the audience? Who is it for? What do they need to get out of it? And then what are our methodologies of conveying this information? And usually what we're trying to find are relationships between things, or how have things changed over time. And we focus on those, and then we focus on what's the medium. Is this a website that we're doing, or a magazine, or a smartphone, or a VR headset? And we build it based with all of that in mind. And then really in terms of how the data is being conveyed, what are the decisions that are being made? You mentioned ethical aspects in that, Jessica. It's a big issue because there's so many subjective decisions that are made. I would say really it's about being transparent and explaining your methodologies, because it really uses statistics, and statistics is a science and a math in and of itself, but you have to make decisions on how you're going to convey those statistics.
Thank you. And yeah, I think that's something actually would be really of interest to the academics or students that are using the new Knowledge Production Project website. And I think they'd also totally appreciate that, yes, it is all about being as transparent as possible in your methodology, so that the conclusions you're communicating are clear where the basis, what they're based on. So I think that sort of goes away to explaining my next question, which was what made you interested in working with the KPP relaunch, apart from your long-standing friendship with Bassam, of course.
I think it was it was a challenge. I think that just the sheer volume. When Bassam and I first started talking, and Bassam, you showed me the data sets that you guys were collecting. It was massive. It was impressive. It was also like, this is a lot of stuff, and there's just so many, and different people are logging different information. But you can also, I could tell this was a project from love. This was really something that you cared deeply about, and that you were really, really wanting this to grow. And so, over years we'd been in touch, and then you reached out and said, okay, I think we have an opportunity now to do something with this. And you've had your experiences with other people trying to work with this data. And I think it was an opportunity, and like any other project, we felt really good about it in the end, just like everything that we conveyed with the data itself and really understanding it. And like every project that has challenges, there are some really great parts of it, and there are some parts we have to work through, to make sure that we are conveying stuff correctly, and that we're making this as impactful as possible for people using it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think perhaps one of the things that are really interesting about this project was that it was such a large data set. And perhaps I can ask you to speak more about one that was more responding to immediate situation. So not a sort of labor of love ongoing for a decade, but something that was responding to something happening in the moment that's really relevant to the past couple of years we've had. So specifically the Decoding Hate project that you worked on with the Asian American Foundation.
Right. So this was a project, it was more kind of a quick turnaround for this project, just because it was a very timely, with the American Defamation League working with the Asian American Foundation, which was more or less formed this year in response to sort of the growing hate against Asians, particularly Asian Americans. I live in Oakland, California. Like, just the amount of violence that was happening in Chinatown in Oakland, just random acts. And the American Defamation League, they had some people, and they were collecting social media feeds and news articles based on events that were happening. And they were really trying to find a way to, how do we convey this? How do we give people the sense of what's happening? And every project that we do is unique and different. Some projects are very academic focused. Some of them are more trying to capture people's attention in almost a dramatic way. And so this was something where we just wanted to convey the sheer volume. They had been collecting this data, categorizing the type of hates. Are these physical? Somebody was bragging on Twitter because they pushed somebody, or somebody was mentioning on Twitter that their restaurant was graffitied, with Asian slurs or something like this. And so they had these sort of groupings of this. And our sort of task with this was just to convey the sheer volume of this. And there is an analytical component to this site as well when you like scroll sort of past all the tweets, but it's more of just the main message is there's a lot of hate. There's a lot of stuff that's been going on, and you can really tie this into COVID-19. And with the onset of the virus, and then just how everything happened, there was this gradual increase in violence against Asians in America, and then a decrease with lockdowns. And as soon as lockdowns eased again, you can see it jump right back up again. And it was heartening, but it was also an honor for us to be able to work on this project as well.
Wes, I think your video froze. So if you can you refresh?
Yeah, just refresh my browser because I don't want to lose you.
Well, at this point you're frozen. So if it's okay, if you wanna go back out and then go back in, we can.
Okay, I'll try it. Okay.
Because we want to see you animated.
Yeah.
Maybe I can respond briefly on the Decoding Hate website we just saw there. I mean, I think it's sort of really visually stunning, and the fact that actually you get a sense of how overwhelming the volume of tweets and incidents and news articles about this kind of violence is, but at the same time it's sort of visually somehow stimulating or interesting. You're sort of enjoying spending time on that website. You sort of extend the amount of time, which means you actually then learn also more and more about this, which I think is quite a clever use of kind of the beauty of data visualization, but obviously for a really important cause in this case. Do you think we can get Wes coming back through the sound, or
Yes, he is here with us.
Fantastic. Okay.
I'm here.
I just said all of the things I love about the website, but I'm going to have to tell you them privately later on. So we'll carry on to the next question, if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wondered if you could speak about how you see perhaps data visualization or data storytelling fields kind of interacting more with academia in the future. And as part of that, if you have any advice for people who are not data storytellers or data scientists, but who might like to become more data literate and perhaps start using data visualizations in their work.
I think the good thing with today is that there are a lot of resources out there in terms of there's online resources. There's even like master classes in data visuals. Like there's Domestika has some good resources and some good teachers there. Then there are also a lot of books. The way I started was really a lot of it was my academic background in economics, because we did a lot of statistics and macro and microeconomics and economic theory and behavioral economics. And that for me was just a personal interest of, I want to understand how things are connected. How the price of gasoline in Texas is determined in some ways by the price of coffee in Brazil. And so there are a lot of different resources out there. I think it's a hard question to answer in the sense that it really depends on your own skill sets that you have. If you're a journalist, there's one way to start. Do you want to program, or do you want to graphic design, or both? Because really data visualization, it's a really multidisciplinary field where you need engineers, you need technologists, and you need designers and UX designers, and people who work in the interactive field because you interact with things. And then you also need a statistician, like people who understand data and analyzing data and how to query that data. We're a project that we're working on right now with a group at Stanford is on the US Census data that just came out. And how do we understand the trends that are happening? Because some of the questions have also changed, and they changed from one census to the other. But you can see, for example, there is a very clear pattern of white-only Americans is on the decline, and you have other and multiracial really increasing. And our diversity score has really jumped, which personally, I think that's awesome. And it's just a matter of like, how do we convey this information in a way for journalists to be able to use this and to be able to go into their county and their tract knowing though that some of these jumps, this white population is still millions and millions and millions. And in some counties, another race group has jumped by 200%, but it might be three people. There is that has, family had a couple of kids. And so it's interesting like, how do you measure this and how do you convey this information? Because there's a percentage and then there's the actual number amount. And trying to give everything context and meanings, and it's fun, but it's a challenge with that. I think it's a matter of when you're really trying to get into this, you're asking questions and then you're trying to determine what are ways to answer these questions.
Yeah, thank you so much for explaining that. And I'd say that for all those reasons and that kind of deep level of thinking, it's been a real pleasure working with Pitch Interactive for the KPP relaunch. I'm really sorry we're going to have to wrap up and move on to our next guest today.
Absolutely.
It's been such a pleasure talking with you today and working on the project, Wes. So thank you so much for coming in.
Great, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh,
Wes, yeah, I just want to thank you for coming on and for turning the knowledge production project into the potential that it is. And we have to also share with everybody who is looking at, let me just make sure that the URL is here if you want to take a look. This is a work in progress, and Wes and Pitch Interactive is going to help us go to the next level as we add more material, more functionality, and as we tweak as we tweak it in the coming months. So, but the most important thing is that I have to share with the academic community, people who are listening, that it was so difficult to find a studio, a data visualization studio that is not only capable of working with academics on these topics, but is made up of people who are invested in the content of what we're doing. So for this, I want to thank you for being part of this, and hopefully we can ask you to join us another time to talk about all sorts of things. Can you say something about the Thomas Jefferson data visualization before you leave?
So I was asked, before I came on this, I just asked, like, what can you give me an idea of kind of questions that you'll send me? And one of the questions was, is there a fun fact about data visualization? And sometimes when I talk about data viz, I like to go back in history. Like, how did we get to here? And one of those facts is that Thomas Jefferson, while he was president of the United States, and this not the entire time, but between 1801 and 1808, he made this personal diagram for himself. And what it is if you can't really read it very well, on the left panel, this is produce. So there's parsley and radishes and different kinds of things that you would find at the market. The very top are months. So it's a time series. I think there's a presidential stamp on this or something too. But and he would just draw a line with a ruler of when these items were in the market, when they were in season. So he knew what time of year, what kinds of things he can go and buy at the market, it's a fascinating, simple in today's world, but at that time it's pretty revolutionary. I mean, this guy was really thinking outside the box at a time when people did not use diagrams and visual representation for data. And so, yeah, it's just a fun fact. It's fun to kind of go back and look at little hints in history of when people use these kind of techniques.
Thank you very much. I actually tried to decipher it after you sent it to us, so I just wanted to show it. Thank you very much, Wes, for joining us, and we hope to see you and work with you soon.
We'll be in touch. Yeah, take care.
Absolutely.
Bye, everyone.
And so our next guest should be Renata joining us shortly. Just before we bring Renata in, we'd like to share some Did You Know facts. So Bassam, if you can roll Did You Know fact number 1. These are fun ways that we're drawing out facts from our databases, and this links into the demo we showed at the beginning. So did you know that in 2015, the total revenue of the RAND Corporation was $291 million more than that of Amnesty International? So quite a significant difference there. And that's from our think tank.
And that's just more, right? It's not, what is the total?
That's just more. The total is a whopping 330 million.
Wow.
Yeah, some serious cash. So yeah, this is the kind of facts and stats you can pick out from the search.knowledgeproduction.com website from the think tank section. All right, fantastic. If we have Renata, we'd love to bring her in and say hello.
Hello.
Hi. Hi, Renata. Thanks so much for coming on the show. If you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about the KPP project, that would be fantastic.
Hi, Renata. Welcome to the Search Files podcast. And I keep looking down because this is where the operations are taking place. I should be looking straight ahead. I should know better. So Renata is our project co-manager, and she has been the driving force in the past few years behind where KPP got to. So welcome to our podcast, Renata. We will feature you much more eminently in the future, but right now we'd love to hear about the databases in just a couple of minutes because that's all the time we have.
Yes, of course. Hi. Hi, Jessica. Hi, Bassam. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Yeah, let me just say a few words about our work and our team. At KPP, we have 11 distinct databases or sources of knowledge production. We will be featuring our databases hopefully in upcoming episodes of the podcast, along with perhaps a team member representing each database. But we basically have 8 semi autonomous teams that consist of database coordinators and research assistants. And those teams have been mining data and cataloging it into spreadsheets. And then those spreadsheets feed into the awesome data visualization and search engine that you see on the website. It's really hard work, very tedious. So I'd like to just give a big shout out to the amazing team, both past and present, because we've been in existence for over a decade. So there have been so many amazing team members contributing to this effort. We hope to feature some of them in future episodes. We have around 20 people at the moment. I just want to say thank you for all you do, and thanks for having me on Search Files. I look forward to being a guest again in future.
Yeah, we'd love that. And Renata, can I ask if people are watching and they'd like to get involved, is there a way that they can do so?
Of course, they can go to the ASI website and perhaps apply for an internship. We have so many internship opportunities. We're always looking for people. Or you can send us an email at info@knowledgeproduction.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Renata. And yes, if anyone interested in knowledge production, and I know that at George Mason here, we have a group of people almost every year that join and work with us on this project, and they actually end up trying to come back because they love the opportunity. It's a vast database with perhaps a unique access not just to information and knowledge production on the region, and academic for the most part, but also it's a way of seeing different sorts of knowledge visually on the same screen, which is why it's different from just going to the library and typing up some things. So thank you all. Thank you, Renata, and hopefully we'll see you soon again.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. So, Bassam, if you could please roll fact number 7.
Number 7. Okay, so
Number
7. That's gonna take some time because it's a large number. No, I'm joking. Here we go.
Okay, fantastic. So, did you know that between 2010 and 2020, the number of think tank articles focusing on water in the region increased by 550%?
No, I did not actually. I mean, I knew it when I saw the slide, but that's really impressive. Wow.
It's pretty significant, right? And I think perhaps of interest to a wide variety of people, both in the kind of environmental studies and elsewhere. Okay, fantastic. So should we bring in our next guest?
Yes. Here we go. And hi, Hatem.
Hello, Bassam. Hello,
How
Jessica.
are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
We are very excited to bring you onto this show because of many reasons. One of them is that you are also involved in the Middle East in a pedagogy initiative project, and you're actually running the Films in the Classroom module, for which we are inviting you to address. Did we share the Hatim's bio already, Jessica?
No, I'm going to jump in and
Yes, go
with it
ahead.
now, if that's all right. So we're very honoured to have Hatem al-Hibri on the podcast. He is the Assistant Professor of Film and Media Studies at George Mason University. He's also affiliated with the Cultural Studies and the Middle East and Islamic Studies departments. And Hatem earned his PhD in Media, Culture and Communication from New York University, and previously was a faculty member at the Media Studies program at the American University of Beirut. His first book, Visions of Beirut, The Urban Life of Media Infrastructure, is also out now from Duke University Press. So take it away, Bassam. Thank you.
Ahlan wa sahlan, Hatim. Thank you very much, Jessica. Hatim, we would like to know a lot of things. It will take a few hours to know them from you, but we have only about 15 to 18 minutes. So the first question that we have as educators, especially as educators, is it's a two-part question. First, how do you actually teach a film or documentary in the classroom? I mean, it's easy to play a documentary and say, "Hey, let's watch, let's talk about it, let's address the themes and so on." But there must be a better way. There must be something more productive than just watching an hour and 10 minutes or an hour and a half or 45 minutes and then just have a casual conversation, which is cool. But there must be something else. And that's the first part. The second part, what do you see as the missed opportunities of some common approaches to film and media in the Middle East studies classroom? So if you can combine those into an answer, that would be great.
Yeah, so I'll try to be briefer rather than longer. Bassam, I have talked about how for many years now we've seen people who will say, "Hey, I'm teaching this class about the Middle East. Does anybody have like a good film that I can use for this subject?" And we watch people sort of trying to reduplicate efforts. So there's obviously a lot of really compelling film from and about the Middle East that's out there. And a lot of it seems to connect to a range of subjects: history, politics, sociology, economics, studies of urban life, gender, sexuality, power, authoritarianism. And there's films which deal with these in a range of ways, with a number of different representational strategies and aesthetic forms. So how do you teach a film? Well, the first question that I would say is, like, one should begin from, what is the purpose of including the film? Sometimes if when people are honest with themselves, the temptation is film fills time in the classroom, and it seems like more obvious than getting people to do readings, and students don't do the readings, but they can like watch the film. Those are moments when people are incorporating film, but in a way that sort of misses the opportunity of what the film can offer for the class, right? So I'd say how I teach film. I teach primarily film and media studies classes. So people are coming to my class either with some background in media studies and film studies, maybe not with a background in the Middle East per se. So how I do it, I have sort of the scaffolding of, they have some experience with film analysis. You can assign students here, watch this film on your own, or we're going to watch part of it in class, and then let's just talk about it. And that, you'll get some conversation. A lot of it might end up devolving into, I like this film for these reasons, I didn't like it for these other reasons, and the reasons are entirely idiosyncratic and not about kind of like a rigorous analysis of the film or discussion of how it works and what its narrative mode is, for example, how its cinematography relates to its editing strategy, and so on. So people can do that. You can just throw up the film. But for it to a much better way is to think about how the film isn't just sort of like an abstract entry point into some related topic, but is actively part of that social field, part of that political field, how it connects to a set of cultural dynamics or tensions that it's commenting on, right? How does film already relate to this thing that you're talking about? When you absent those things, without that scaffolding, you have a much less productive conversation, right? You might have accomplished the thing of, I've gotten people to talk about something that they can connect to, perhaps through some kind of emotional appeal, like we want to sympathize with this character, and that's a way to like get into it in a way that like an academic, like a journal article might not, right? But you lose all this other stuff that it could be doing, right? Because there's a lot of really clever film that's out there, for example, if we were to focus on just film as the topic, there's a lot of things that film does. So one of the questions that you can like ask students is, what is the commentary that this film makes, and how does it make it, right? This can help get things away from how realistic was it, right? Realism, of course, in the humanities is a more complex term. Some people take it, though, in common usage to just mean this seemed believable, this seemed authentic, this seemed like it could actually happen, or this didn't fully capture like a more complex view, or it didn't share my own political view. Therefore, like the film is bad. So, what is the kind of comment that the film is trying to make? All right, I'll stop talking so we can have more of a conversation rather than me. I can keep doing this.
No, this is 1 second. No, this is great. And I mean, I have lots of questions, but I'm going to keep them to things that you can answer in a like, reasonable time period. So the second question is, how would we differentiate between teaching a class whose focus is film and media, right? On the one hand, including film and media as topic in a course, and the use of film and media as a teaching tool in a classroom that might not otherwise, that we might not otherwise discuss. So, you teaching film and media as basically your profession and what you do, and people come with that expectation. How is that different from teaching film in a class that's not on film and media? A class, for instance, on the Arab uprisings, as you know. Of course, as you know, you and I teamed up to teach a class on text film and the Arab uprisings at George Mason at the Middle East and Islamic Studies program.
So I'll try to answer the second one first, because it's easier to answer. So how might one incorporate film in a class about the Middle East or a specific topic like the uprisings? The first question to ask is like, should I do it at all? And the answer might be no. Because if you want to do it well, if you want to do it properly, that is, if this isn't just, I want to give them like a week off, so we're going to watch a film, which sometimes is like the approach, it requires a certain amount of work. It requires some scaffolding. One of the ways to think about this, again, is to think about the film as part of the topic or part of the subject. The film itself is part of the lived realities that your class is about, right? So in what way does the film comment on this? Does it participate in it? Does it push back on it? You might think about how the film reflects and refracts on a broader cultural context or a set of social experiences or political situations. But see, already here, we're potentially limiting what kinds of films one has in mind, right? What you start to encounter is how your own ideas about how film might do those things, you start to look for films that do that. This is why oftentimes people reach for documentary, right? Documentary seems to be immediately about the world itself. And so teaching a documentary is pedagogical because it shows them something about the world, right? And I've had many conversations with people where a lot of the film about the Arab uprisings, some of it purports to do that, like tries to show you the event of the uprising in some kind of direct way. But a lot of I'd hazard a guess that maybe even most of the film about like Egypt and Tunisia completely does away with that. Not interested in trying to capture reality. Well, they are interested in capturing reality, just not in that sort of, without that promise of direct and unmediated access that documentary often presumes. When it's documentary in form, it reflects on or it problematizes testimonial, for example. It becomes very self-reflexive, becomes skeptical of the idea of being able to present a full account of the events of the 18 days, for example. They become skeptical of the idea that in Tunisia, for example, it's one event as opposed to a series of events that become linked and narrated in a particular fashion. That there's similar things happen, by the way, when people want to make films about war. You look at films of war, of like the war in Iraq. You look at films that come out of the Lebanese Civil War. Many of them become very skeptical about the idea that you can represent the war, that you can give a full, coherent master narrative, the voice of world history version, that becomes wholly inadequate, maybe even an impossible task. So instead, what you have is films which look to the personal, that look to the problem of being able to situate one's relationship to world events. You also have some films which do try to be much more didactic. Here's this event, and then this happened, and then this happened. And there's this other set of factors at play, and they try to address the things that political historians are very good at, economic historians are good at, historians of what historical sociology will do really well, for example. But documentary, that you start to end up with like a 3-hour film, and one which is like a series of talking heads explaining things. And then what we've encountered is maybe it would have been better just to teach the subject with some other kind of exercise. So this is to say that there's tremendous opportunity that can come from using film in the classroom. And the approach would be, well, what kind of conversation does this film allow? What does it open up for conversation? How does this film allow us to reflect on how we relate to an event, how we relate to a set of experiences, a set of people, right? How does it allow us to ask anew questions of what our political horizons might be? How does it allow us to query standard and received ways of representing things? Right? How does it allow us to think, for example, about intellectual history, people's ideas about the world? How does it allow us to, just like in the class, have an encounter the way one would have, say, with like a photograph? If we were to put up a photograph, let's talk about this photograph. Let's think it through. What does it mean to think about this image and not another? What does it mean to think about the photographer being here at this point in time in relation to this event? What does it mean to look at a historical photograph? How does this feel like a different point in time? How does this relate to memory? How are events remembered? How are photographs part of how things are remembered? You can do similar things, by the way, with music. It might be that what you want in the class isn't a film, but a song and a music video. It might be that what you want is poetry. Or it might be that really what you need in this case is film. Because film has its own aesthetic life. This is, of course, to come back to Bassam's original question, if what one is doing is incorporating film into a class that is not primarily about film itself, right?
Okay.
But of course, film and media and all of these other aesthetic forms, all of these other media institutions are a very important central part of life in the Middle East, in a way which Middle East studies needs to get much better at grappling with, I think, as a whole.
Thank you, Hatem. Before Jessica asks you the next question, I just want to say that whenever you talk, like your voice calms me down. So whenever I have any sort of anxiety, do you mind if I call you and just ask you to talk about anything?
I'm happy to do this for you, Bassam. If any time I need to feel like everything is doable, then I can call you.
Okay, thank you.
There you go. I wanted to ask you, Hatem, I know that you teach media studies in topics in areas that are not related to the Middle East, and I wondered if you could speak a bit on how that's different, or approaches that might be of interest.
So how to teach the Middle East in a class which is otherwise just about like film or media more broadly? How do you bring that in? How do you incorporate it?
Exactly.
Yeah. So there's so this is like a big challenge, right? So in this case, the home field advantage that I have is it's students who are already practicing and building up their film analytical abilities or their media analytical abilities. They've become familiar with critical thinking about film and media more broadly. So the first way in is to give, if it's a class that's about a topic, right? So once I taught a class about film and revolution. So they're already thinking about revolution. And I've already sort of coaxed them into how do we think about the context in which the event of a revolution takes place. So they're already sort of good at sort of contextualizing revolution. They have some conceptual some conceptual frameworks there. And then it's a matter of, okay, so now we're just looking at a set of problematics, a set of political questions, a set of questions even about representation of revolution. And now we're going to look at how that's happened in Algeria, Tunisia, Egypt, Lebanon, uh, Iraq, Sudan, wherever that might be. A similar set of questions in a new context. And usually this means we've already broken down some problematic and Orientalist conceptions, which say ideas about underdevelopment, ideas about religion and politics. We've already sort of cleared some of that out. Right? So they're sort of primed to come in with a sympathetic approach, to look at the region not as the third world, which we need to feel sympathetic for or bad about, but instead with a set of critical questions about empire, instead with a critical set of questions about what might we learn from people who've struggled in this particular political framework. How can we grapple with their disillusionment with revolution, for example, as opposed to how people have grappled with it in Latin America or elsewhere? So one way in is there's already a set of questions which make it so jumping to the Middle East is different. But I can also say, like, so when I've taught classes which are just about film and media of the Middle East, I get to spend a lot more time breaking down what Orientalism in film looks like, what problematic ways of presenting the region look like, that we get to foreground some of that. But then I also get to spend a lot more time laying the groundwork for really contextualizing the study of film in the region, the study of media institutions in the region, the study of TV in the region. It allows me to go much more in depth, to give them a much more well-rounded understanding of how, for example, radio has been really important in different places in the region, to think more carefully about social media and its politics and its relationship to new affective economies, for example. And they sorry.
Nothing.
That's
Go
it.
ahead. We're waiting for you.
That was basically it. I'm just going to keep rambling if you don't cut me off.
Actually, I do want to ask one final question before we release you on this beautiful Wednesday. So, by the way, I just had an.
Do you want to ask the question on camera? Oh, fantastic! Got the purple shirt back.
Am I back?
You are.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so I'm glad that we have this opportunity, because I want to ask one more question before we release you. Basically, this is an unending conversation, especially given that there are so many sorts of needs in terms of films in the classroom. However, one of the things you're doing, Hatem, is you're working with us in the Middle East Studies Pedagogy Initiative. You're leading the effort to produce the Films in the Classroom module with a board of advisors, an international board of advisors, an awesome team at the Middle East Studies Pedagogy Initiative. And that effort is going to detail everything that you just described in ways that are useful, and it's an ongoing effort, so it's not going to stop. It's ongoing. That addresses various aspects of this arena. Can you tell us about the this teaching module, the films and classroom teaching module, and what you're doing and how it will be useful for not just educators but people who want to learn more about the Middle East?
Yeah, so the Film and Media in the Classrooms project is going to be a module, part of the MESB project, which where it'll be basically for anybody who's like, hey, I have this class and I'd like to incorporate, a film. I'd like to do some kind of maybe section on media of some kind. How do I do it? I want something which will somehow help for a class that's like, say, about Egypt post 2015. Is there a film that would be useful for that? So, what you would this would be sort of like a one-stop shop for a range of topics. We're going to start out with resources for the Arab uprisings, but eventually we'll expand to the question of Middle East studies more generally. And we're going to have here are some texts which one might teach alongside films. Here are how and where different films might be relevant, and a range of scaffolding questions and assignments, or points of like discussion points or questions to think about, as well as recommendations on readings. Sort of a one-stop shop for all of those questions that we see on our social media feeds. Hey, does anybody have a good film for this topic X? And then people dump things. Instead, we'll have it consolidated, curated, and it's Bassam made it sound very grand that I'm like leading it, but it'll be sort of a group of people who will be working together, putting together what resources we know of, but also relying perhaps on a broader group effort.
It is actually, wait, this mute thing is not going to end until the pandemic ends. It is actually grand. You're very humble, because what we will end up doing with your efforts and the team and the faculty that are joining you as advisors, what we will be doing is answering questions that are constantly asked, like you shared. I mean, not a week goes by without me either getting this question myself, or reading it on Facebook in one of those, lists where people are just asking, I'm looking for something on this, or how do I actually teach Silence of the Palaces, that movie, or the Battle of Algiers, Lawrence of Arabia. Of course, these are the usual suspects, but there is a lot of new material that is out there that is remarkable, and people don't realize it sometimes, perhaps because they keep going to the usual suspects. So we also will be featuring that, which is part of the KPP films, documentary, and TV shows databases on KPP at this address, which I'll show now because I like showing it. It's nice and yellow and it flies in. Isn't that cool, Jessica? Were you impressed with how this flew in?
I'm stunned. These graphics,
It's stunned,
they're
yeah, it's
as
stunning.
modern as Microsoft Word
Except
2003 or something.
Except that I missed earlier when I was also on camera and I was like trying to fidget. I didn't know I was on camera, so it looked like I was not listening. I was just trying to find like the right graphic. So
Where's the
yes,
zooming in graphic?
absolutely, absolutely, Hatim. It's really remarkable, and thank you for doing this. And we will have you back to actually address these matters in the future. So thank you for joining us. I don't know if Jessica has any other questions, but we're trying to wrap up within the hour, and we have 3 minutes left. And if we make it within the hour, that's awesome, because
so
it's our
close.
first episode.
Yeah, well, I wanted to just perhaps, while Hatem is here, sort of bring together what we announced at the beginning, so the new KPP data visualizations, with what we've been discussing in terms of the films in the classroom module at MESB, to sort of say our future plans of integrating those two websites much more, so that the power of KPP can also be feeding into those curated modules, and allow people to both make suggestions, perhaps in the future, of films that then can build from that initial curated content to then have a sort of living and growing resource. So yeah, it's great synergy, and thank you so much for coming on and talking us through the really fascinating aspects of teaching film.
Thanks for
Thank,
having me.
thank you, Hatem. See you soon. See you around George Mason.
All right. Talk to
All
you
right.
soon.
Take care.
Okay, thank you.
And before we close, I just want to give a shout out to Pitch Interactive. I will add their URL here on the bottom right, and I will take ours out. So basically, if you'd like to learn more about Pitch Interactive, you can go to pitchinteractive.com. Their website is right here. Basically, they do some amazing work on various topics that are of interest to the academic community. And it's, again, one of the places that does the work, not only because they are a data visualization studio, but because they are also interested in academia, they're interested in knowledge production, they're interested in research, and they have a really wonderful team. Wesley Grubbs, Catalina, Kat, Madrid, whom we work with all the time, Nick and PU, Lynn, and everyone else. So I just wanted to share with you that
And Sam,
link.
I think that the link isn't quite coming up yet. So it could be great to put it on. We've still got knowledgeproduction.com and the ghost of Hatem.
Really?
Just an
How
empty
about
blank
here?
screen of Hatem. Yes,
Okay,
that's
apologies.
fantastic.
So, yeah, it's if you can visit pitchinteractive.com to check out the data visualization work they do, that would be great. I want to thank everybody who joined us, and mostly I want to thank, well, you should be thanking me because you're the host, Jessica. So, in a
Thank
way,
you, Bassam, for
I'll send it to you to close and promise great things for the future.
okay, fantastic. Well, thank you, Bassam, for all the wonderful visuals and for asking some fantastic questions to Hatem about the films. We really enjoyed, or I really enjoyed hearing more about that. So thank you to all of our guests for coming on, and we're so excited to be starting this new Search Files podcast. You can expect to hear from us again in November, and we'll be bringing you some more interesting people from the big data and data science world, and also from academia.
And we might have some jingles next time so that there's some audio. I know because it's kind of flat. We'll try to make it more interesting. Thank you all, and thanks, Jessica. And should we leave them with a did you know or?
Yeah, what a fantastic idea. So let's leave them with fact 4 on the did you knows, please. So, did you know that the total number of dissertations written about film doubled from 50 to 100 between the years 2001 and 2008?
No, actually, I did not.
There you
That's
go.
really,
Now you know.
yeah, that's actually very interesting. This is just one of thousands of bits of information you can learn more about or find out when you go to knowledgeproduction.com, and we will be sharing more with you because this episode, but also this podcast, is really about bringing this edifice of databases to the fore. With the help of guests that we will be speaking with in the next few months, over the next few months or years. And then thanks again, Jessica. And we should say goodbye, right? We're
I think we
right
should.
at
We're
3
on the
p.m.
hour. So
Yes.
let's go for it.
Thank
Thank
you all.
you. Bye.